Hello, everybody. This is Danielle. So glad to see everyone for the fourth panel for the Creators Room. I'm happy to welcome you here. And I wanted to do some quick housekeeping on how to communicate to our panelists. So if you see in the chat, you can make sure that you have everyone selected so you can speak to everyone in the chat. And also, if you have any questions throughout the duration of the panel, you can use the Q&A feature, which is located right where you see the circle. And I'm so excited to get started. The Creators Room is an intimate conversation about the journey of creators working behind the scenes in the arts. Most of all, the importance of protecting your artistry and providing tangible resources you can jumpstart to reignite your career. Before I introduce the panelists, again, I want to thank you for joining. And for tonight's panel, we have Andy Cuevas. Andy is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Hartford Stage and a very proud first generation Bolivian American. She has served on the planning committees for APAP, Association of Performing Arts Professionals, and Thrive Arts Conferences, as well as volunteered for the New Jersey Theater Alliance Marketing and Strategic Planning Committees. She also served on the executive committee for the New Jersey Arts and Culture Administrators of Culture Network, and as a mentor for early career development program and students in the Bronx via her alma mater, Fordham University. So Andy, please come to the virtual stage. Yes.
Hi.
Hi, so good to see you.
Hi,
and next up, oh, great. And next up, we have Neha Gandhi. She is a producer, curator, publicist based out of San Diego. Neha has dedicated her work for creating unforgettable live performance experiences with intention and cultural integrity. As an entrepreneur in the live performance industry, her career has been far from traditional, but always with the intent of lifting community through art. She is currently the local lead for So Far Sound San Diego and is a publicist with French Press Public Relations for social impact organizations. Neha, please come to the virtual stage. So good to see you.
Hi, everyone.
I love the plants behind you as well. And next up, we have writer, activist, speaker, Ro Bell, who has been in the entertainment business for over 25 years, performing music, theater, dance, and in major cities such as Orlando, New York City, London, England. Ro has been directing and writing for theater and film for 15 years and was nominated for Outstanding Director for the original play Descent of Truth at the DC Black Theater Awards in 2002. For the last 10 years, Ro has dedicated themselves to working in arts education and community outreach. They also created an organization called Transact Entertainment that tells compelling stories that are inclusive and provide visibility to underrepresented communities who are usually overlooked or misrepresented in film and television. So Ro, please come to the virtual stage. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Happy you're here. And last but not least, we have Sarah McCaffrey. She is a manager of interdisciplinary arts at Asia Society Museum in New York City, where she curates and produces a diverse portfolio of art projects. Sarah's intercultural and interdisciplinary approach is shaped by her extensive background in the artistic process, including dance pedagogy, choreography, and performance. Sarah, please welcome to the Creators Room. So good to have all of you here. So we are here to talk about power of the pitch. So what is a pitch? I will love all of my wonderful panelists to, let us know what is a pitch to your industry. I know for myself, when I thought of this platform, this particular panel, pitch means that you're selling a particular product or a business and you want to pitch it to a producer, a presenter. You can also have, pitching music to different radio stations and things like that. And so since the Creators Room is for, our students, our alumni, our teaching artists, those that are trying to, reignite their careers, I would love to know, what does pitch mean to you? Andy, you want to start it off?
Yeah, I come to this sort of pitching concept from the marketing mindset. So for me, a pitch can also often be working with collaborations, working with other community organizations, finding ways that we can all benefit together, which is what, and part of the artist pitch too, I think, is finding ways that you can say, this is good for me, but it's also good for you.
And Ro, what about you from the artist perspective?
Well, as a screenplay writer, a pitch for my particular skill or genre, a pitch is actually a comprehensive document on what your film or series is about. And there's specific things that go into this document that let the producers or the executives know where your story is going, who your characters are, and what your show is about.
And Sarah and Neha, what does pitch mean to you?
I guess in my line of work as a curator and producer of interdisciplinary arts, because I work with artists that come from so many different disciplines, what a pitch is definitely depends upon the artist. But I think a through line of what a pitch is more of on a conceptual level is, I like to think of it as a story, because we know the power of stories, especially as artists. They're one of the utmost storytellers in my eyes. And I recently came across a quote by Patty Digg, where she says, the shortest distance between two people is a story. So I thought that was a nice way to think of a pitch, is kind of closing that distance and creating some sort of shared language or shared world between two people through this story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important things about a pitch is the ability for it to be packaged well. How well you can present the work and talk about the work that you're either pitching to a producer or pitching in a collaboration, it's that package, and that package is what your pitch is. So there's so many different components of what a pitch can include, making sure that every single component really speaks to your artist's voice, really speaks to the type of work that you can do and the professionalism with which you can bring that work to these stages, these producers, these areas, is really important.
Right. And I'm glad that you mentioned the artist's voice. And Sarah, I know that's a big part of what you look for when you're looking for, different exhibits and performances or at Asia Society. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what exactly is included? What is the artist's voice and what exactly are you looking for when you say that?
Sure. Yes, I think there's so many different ways to go about it in terms of how to capture one's artist voice. But one thing that I look for is a sort of clarity in why this person is telling the story that they're telling, and also that so what question. So like, not if I say I'm a dancer and choreographer, then in the pitch, if they can explain so what, like what is the importance of that and the relevance of everything that they're doing. So I think that those components of so what, which might be a kind of an annoying question for the artist. It's like, I have so many reasons, so what? But if the artist is able to kind of explain that in a very clear way during the pitch, and there's no mystery, you're not making the person that you're presenting to kind of do the guesswork or kind of like make these assumptions of why you're doing a certain thing, or you're not making the person you're presenting to answer so what, but the artist is doing that on their own terms and in the language that they choose with the words that they choose. So I think that can sometimes be a difficult part for artists. And I used to be a dancer and choreographer myself. So sometimes I'll just have assumptions that people know what I'm talking about. So having someone that you, or some people that you can share your pitch with and see if there was anything kind of either lost in translation or just missing, I think is really important.
Yeah. And Sarah, also, since you mentioned that you were previously, dancing, you've done choreography, how do you even pitch that to a venue or pitch a performance, a dance performance to a venue?
Right. I think for dance, it's so difficult because it's an ephemeral art form, right? So you have to, when you're a dancer and choreographer, think kind of holistically about your artistic practice. So not only are you preparing your artwork to be presented, but another part of you should also be thinking, how do I capture this in a poetic way, in a strong way, in a professional way, so that the video is clear? Because with that kind of holistic approach to your craft and art making, that will ultimately go into your pitch and materials. So for dance, it's important to have video, so you can see the movement, you can see the artistic voice. And for me personally, I think it's nice to have shorter clips of dance works and then having the longer work ready. So if you share the short clip, and maybe you have the short clip on your website, and then if you are presenting, you can always share the link to the full work after the meeting. And always having the full work ready too, I think is important, so that when people follow up and they're like, oh, I saw this clip I'm interested in, and then you can immediately send that full work. So again, that goes back to the first step though, of that seed of thinking holistically about the work, not only the life when it's presenting, but its afterlife, So yeah, for dance, I would say the videos are very important. And of course, if photography can be done, that captures the performance live, I think that's a beautiful element to
Professional photography.
Yeah, professional photography. Yeah. And I mean, what is professional? As long as someone can capture it in a nice, beautiful, artistic way, with clarity, that might mean collaborating with a photographer so they can work on their portfolio. And at the same time, you're getting beautiful pictures. But I think those are some of the elements that are important in a dance pitch.
Right.
And to build on that for 1 second, I think all of what Sarah just described is your branding. You have to have a clear brand identity and then invest in that. And it doesn't always have to be a financial investment. It can be a collaboration investment, like you were saying, if you have a friend who's a photographer and you can help each other out. If you have somebody who knows about websites, then you can help them create content for their business, and they can help you with your website. Just finding ways that you can make sure that you're not just thinking about your product, which is very important, but also thinking about how others are going to experience your product.
Right. And also you made a good point. Tapping into like your network of people or people that your community, you've probably seen in your community where you're like, oh wow, I could really use this person for photography, for videography, or even their marketing expertise, or ownership is a big thing that I like to talk about. Make sure before you're sending all of this information out about your performance that it's protected. You don't want someone to steal your idea, and that's like super major for me. So Ro, do you want to discuss what exactly is in a pitch, and how you as an artist package all of that?
Yes, absolutely. I can go straight into I have a visual here, something to show you so that you can not only hear what I'm saying, but visualize what I'm saying. So you'll be able to see what goes into a pitch deck. And this particular pitch deck is geared towards television series. But however, a pitch deck could be done for anything, for a project, for an event, a theater, a film, anything. So it doesn't, just, they have different templates for, different types of pitch deck. But this particular pitch deck is for a television series. It's a television series I am working on, and I have two documents in one here. So I have a pitch deck, and then I have a show pitch Bible. Now, a show pitch Bible is unique to television. So while the pitch deck is something that you can do for any product, project, or event, a show pitch Bible is specifically for a television series. And they started off with networks. When networks will get new writers, when network television will get new writers, the new writers need to know everything about that show. So they created a Bible. And in that Bible, you will have everything about the characters' backgrounds, their storylines, so that writer could pick up where the last writers left off. So first off, in your when it comes to your pitch, like I want to state, like what Danielle had said, you need to register your intellectual property, right? So you want to make sure that your idea is registered either with Writers Guild of America, or that it's copywritten. One of the things you can do, if you don't have a script, it's just an idea, put everything that you can, outline of everything that the idea is, the story outline, and then have it copywritten, which is what I did. You could also have them sign an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement, which states that if the producer or exec who is seeing your pitch is not going to steal your idea. And if you have a lawyer or agent, an entertainment lawyer agent, they usually handle that kind of stuff. So you don't have to worry about that. So here is my television series, Sergio So. I start with the title page. And what I've done is I've used images that kind of give the feel of what the show is about. This is kind of a funky urban, type of vibe, a little bit retro. And I wanted to get that feel with the images. And one thing that I learned about execs, which I'm really happy to hear about, is they like images because they need to see your vision. So the more that you can like put in here that what your show really looks like, then they can visualize it. So you got Sergio So, your title page. Next page, please. You have your log line. Your log line is really your elevator pitch. So if you're stuck in the elevator, well, not stuck in the elevator, but you're in the elevator with an executive, and the executive says, what is your show about? You need 2 or 3 sentences to go in and say what your show is about. My show, a young independent hip hop soul artist and illegitimate son of a music legend, seeks to make it big in the music industry while staying true to himself. Haunted by a painful past, lost in the gray areas of sexuality, gender, and what it means to be a Black man in America, Sergio will find himself battling for the very soul he is still in search of. So I talk about who he is, who the character is. I talk about what he wants, what's his goal. I talk about what's keeping him from getting to that goal. And then I talk about his conflict. The last line hopefully makes the person want to say, tell me more. That's what I hope for. Next, we have your one pitch. This is your one pitch page. So this is what they will walk away with after you give your pitch. This right here should have the name of the show. It should have your name. It should have your information on how to contact you. It should have a couple of paragraphs about the show, and it should have something biographical about you. Why? Because execs, producers, studios, they want to know why you are the best person to tell this story. So you need to find the connection in the show on why this story should be told by you. So this particular story is about someone who's in the music business. I've been in the music business for years, so I have familiarity with that. Also, this person, some of the main characters are gender non-conforming. I'm gender non-conforming. So there's 2 ways that I connect to this story and what makes me the best person to tell this story. Next page.
Before we go to the next page, Ro, can you elaborate a little bit more of like if there's any kind of like sensitive information or things to look out for? Should that be like a certain section of a pitch, or do you want to elaborate a little bit more on like the sensitivity of a certain subject?
Yeah,
if it's part of it.
Right. So there is a part in here, and I'll show you where I put a quote in there. And in that quote, I'll tell you the quote, but that gives me the opportunity because they want to know what the show is about. And then when you talk about not so much the storyline of the show, but what is the message? What are you saying? And when you're talking about the message, that is the opportunity to talk about, anything that you have in there that might be sensitive, and you might have to explain some things. So like for me, there's a lot of things that's about gender nonconforming issues on there, and I may have to break those things down because they might be curious on what, pronouns, and why does this person go by he, she, and they? What is all of that? So you need to be well versed in whatever issue that you might be, talking about, because there may be questions about that, right? And you may have to talk about that. So, and I'll get to that page also. So then the next thing you need to talk about is the tone of the show. And you have to have parent shows. So this is the place where I know a lot of artists, a lot of writers want to say, my show is like no other show, but that's not going to work in a pitch. The people listening to your pitch need to be able to imagine, they need to compare it to something else in order for them to get it. So you always, if you ever watch a show where they have doing a parody of someone doing a pitch, and they're like, oh, it's like Star Wars meets Clifford the Big Red Dog. Like, it's like, I don't know what show that would be, but that's this kind of idea. You have to set the tone. And if you notice, I highlighted in yellow because this is full of adjectives, full of descriptions, right? Sexy urban drama, elements of the supernatural, young Black Afro Latinx artist, New York City, complex, magical, erotic, edgy, imaginative with an eerie, mystical undertone, vintage 90 neo-soul music video, gritty urban landscapes, artsy retro, youthful chaotic, haunting mysticism and darkness. So these are like, it's like when you go and you look at a Netflix show and you see underneath it, the dark, ominous, mystery, thriller, like, you have to like kind of paint a picture of what your show is going to look like, and cinematography wise, how are you going to film it and tell the story? Next page.
And I think the fact that you have Euphoria as an example, because the cinematography is really like edgy
Yeah,
and
it
things
is.
like that. So before you get to the tone, do you create like a mood board to come up with like these kind of
Yeah,
that
and sometimes I do. One of my pitch decks actually just has a mood board. I don't have this tone on it. Something you could just throw a bunch of images and filters that look a certain way. That if you want to use the sepia filters, things like that. It just creates a mood and certain pictures that tell a story. So yes, you can start with a mood board, or you can use a mood board in place of this also. So.
Right. And I think there's also work for like theater too, because I would love to know like different, theater examples or musical theater examples that a potential person could be pitching to me. So I like
Yeah.
that.
The other thing is the one that I saw that spoke to me. It wasn't a theater one, but Stranger Things pitch Bible. Oh my God, I was so impressed by it because what they did in between like all of the log line and the one pitch page, the images were that of 1980s sci-fi films with kids in it, like E.T., Goonies, and it was wrinkled up like an old book. So it had the filter like it was so when you're reading through their pitch Bible, it's like it gives you this feel already that you're in a 1980s sci-fi film that's centered around, adolescence. You already get that vibe. So I love the way that they did theirs. So this is where I was talking.
Can I jump in and add one thing about the slide before too? I typed it in the chat, but for anyone who's watching this recording later and doesn't have access to that, what I love particularly about this slide too is the coloring of the text that you did here. So many people will be reading these pitches and just gazing over them. Maybe they have a whole mountain of things and making the themes pop out to them. It's the same strategy we use in marketing. We know people have short attention spans, and getting those themes really in front of people, even if they're scanning it quickly, is great. So I love that example here.
Yes, keeping that in mind. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the next page, so this is where I was mentioning before, Danielle, where I said there's a page on here that has a quote that speaks towards the message. My quote is, "There is a whole world beyond the binary." And that allows me, if I'm doing a pitch, if I'm talking while I'm using this pitch deck, I can now talk about the message behind the show right here using this quote. Next page. So this is where I talk about previous projects. I only point out the things that people may recognize, or stuff that has been written about me, or stuff that they can look up and they can see, oh, this play was produced, or they did receive an award for best director. And so I only stick with stuff that they can look up and they can see, and that's a picture of me directing. Next page. Next slide, I should say. Why will audience love this? So basically in here, I pick out the things where I think that audience would love it. First, I talk about it's a hot topic. The show talks about hot topics, the things that everybody's talking about right now. So it's very current, it's very relevant. The other thing I talk about is that they get to follow the experience of characters they never get to see as main characters in television and film. So they'll get to know people that they usually don't get to know on television or screen in a very authentic way. So this is where you're going to break down why your audience will love this. Next slide. Okay, character and show info. And this one, in a pitch deck, I am only doing a small synopsis on the characters. You can put pictures here. I didn't put pictures on this one, but I did my main characters. I call them the Trinity. These are my 3 main characters. And then over here, the show info and possible outlets. My show is a weekly series. It's 10 episodes per season, 45 minutes long. My budget is $700,000 per episode, which is low. So it's like, but I feel like I could do this $700,000 per episode. Usually that's like $4 million. But I'm going to use newcomer actors, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not gonna build a bunch of sets. So I think I can do it for 700,000. The outlets I'm looking to do online streaming platforms, cable television, maybe YouTube. This will not be a major network show. It's way too edgy for major networks. So I wouldn't put that on there. Next slide. Now, normally what I would do is I would end it if this was just a pitch deck. Your pitch deck for television is like a calling card. It's like the thing to get you in the door, right? Now, when someone says, let's set up a meeting, right? And they want to go, now you got to sell it. Even when you got to go in, you get 20 minutes to go in and kind of sell your idea. This would be the show pitch Bible, which is more extensive. You would put all of those things that I put in those first, like the log line, the one-page pitch would be in it, but then you would go into deeper, your character arc will be more extensive. So next, I'll give you an example, the next slide. So here I dedicated a whole page to my central character, and this is his character arc. So you'll know his whole story. And I have the three main characters are like that. So you can go through the next 3 slides on there, Danielle. There's Blue Rage. And if you notice, I use images of people from characters from different shows that I felt like these characters were like. So this particular person here is Asmarie. Asmarie was in Empire. And what did I notice about Asmarie in Empire is when you looked at Asmarie, you could not tell whether Asmarie was a boy or a girl. Asmarie is an androgynous model. The character Avery Blue Rage Renaud is non-binary and androgynous. So I wanted that type of feel. So they like to, while they don't like for you to pitch a particular actor, because you never know if a studio has a problem with a certain actor, they do like references to characters. So you could say, I might love for Orlando Jones to play the Ghost of Jamu on here, but I would not pitch him. I would say Ghost of Jamu's character is similar to Mr. Anansi in American Gods, like that. So, you know, so I'm not trying to pitch that particular actor. So I'm not pitching this particular actor, but that character fits this character, is similar to this character. So they could get an idea of what that character is like. Next one, next page. This is my other character. And now I go into the next slide. I go into my minor characters. If you see on the next slide, my supporting characters. And I just give a small synopsis on who they are and how they connect to my central character. So that's the most important part. You have to tie all of these back to your central character, how they connect to them. And we could go through the next slides because it's only just going through my supporting characters. The next one, the next slide. So I wanted to point out here, so when I pitched this to someone, the first picture you see there is the guy from Dave, which is kind of the sidekick to Dave's character. And they said that when they saw that picture, they knew exactly who Nasir was because they watched the show and they knew that character. So that's what I mean by it helps them to understand who your characters are. Next slide. Now, this is really what your pitch Bible is really about, because they want to know if your show has enough content and storyline and material to do several seasons. And so right here is what you're going to do is get them episode concepts. So what I have here is a concept for each 10 episodes for my first season. And what I did is I numbered the episode. I put the title of the episode, Labor of Love, and then I did a synopsis, just a brief synopsis of that episode. So if you go through the next 3 slides, Danielle, I do all 10 of them so that they get an idea. Next slide. All 10 of those. And then the next slide, I go into season concepts. So now I have 4 seasons of information. So I know what 4 of my seasons are going to be. And I do the same thing. Season 1 boxed in, and I talk about that season. I go all the way up to 4. So I have basically, 10 episodes per season. I already have my storylines thought out. World building, what I talk about, Sergio's 4 worlds, there's 4 worlds here. And what I do is I go into each one. There's his past, which takes place in Newark. And I do a description, and then I talk about the people who are in that world, the characters that are in that world. So we have Sergio's past. The next one is his present, which is New York City. If you go to the next slide. The next one is Hollywood, which is where he's trying to get to, right? He's trying to get to that world. And then the 4th world is the spirit world, if you go to the next slide. So Sergio talks to the ghost of his father, the ghost of Jamu, and his mother is a Santeria high priestess. So with that, we have the Orishas, the ghost of Jamu, ancestor spirits. So they all live in this world. So this is what the supernatural element to this show is. And then I want to talk to them in the next slide about how the music, poetry, and the art play a role in this show as a storyteller. So I talk about how I use the music and art, that each show will be centered around a piece of art, a piece of poetry, or some type of music. And even that the cinematography, the urban landscapes, the street art, the people on the streets doing everyday Monday, it's part of the art of the show. So I thought that was really special about and unique about this show. So I wanted to highlight it. And then the last slide, the second to the last slide is a thank you again with my information and how they can get in contact with me. Now, you talked earlier, I think it was, who was that name? One of you had mentioned about when you have other people view your pitch or listen to your pitch and them understanding and having clarity of what your pitch is about. When I have people, my colleagues review my pitch, I also have them answer these questions. So when I create my pitch Bibles, I have these questions in mind and I have answered these questions in my head, right? So then when I have somebody review this pitch Bible for me, I go have them answer these questions. If they answer those questions way off from what my answer is, then I know that I haven't done very well in communicating my idea, my pitch, and I have to go back to the drawing board. So this is kind of what I use to kind of gauge if the person is really getting what I'm trying to say. If they answer those questions similar to what I expect those answers to be, then I know that I'm communicating my ideas well. So that's basically it.
That was so informative. And I would love to hear from the panelists. I know that Brett, one of our teaching artists, is in the audience. Thank you for coming. Brett, can I make you talk? Would you be open to come into like the virtual stage to ask your question? Cool. So give me 1 second. I'm going to allow you to talk. And go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Happy you're here.
So here's my question. I'm pitching, there's a musical I've written about 7 high school students, which results in a school shooting. The show tends to get noticed until we get to final talks, and then I tend to get but actually, you know what? No one really wants to see that. Without sometimes them even having read it or listen to the music and see it's not a dark comedy, but like there's a lot of humor and humanity in it. How do I get through this stage and get people, to see the goodness in the piece and why it's a strong piece?
You want me to answer? Does anybody else have?
You want to jump in and give your opinion?
Because I want to say what about your show do you think, like when we go back to that pitch, why will audiences love it? My question is like what about your show do you think will connect with them or connect to an audience? Because personally for me, I would highlight that. I know someone told me too about my pitch. They were like, I don't really care about him in the music business. This thing about the gender and stuff like that's interesting. And so, because that wasn't in my log line, that wasn't in my elevator pitch at all. It was just about him in the music business. And they were like, I don't care about that. That's anybody can do that story. But what about his gender and sexuality and all of that? That's different. Highlight that. So I had to really flip it, you know, to think about, okay, what part of this story do people want to hear? You know, what should I highlight? And that's I've had to make those adjustments too. When someone says, I don't want to hear about that.
Right.
I have to find something that people do want to hear about. Do you have people outside of just pitching, the people who are giving you feedback, like, you know, other colleagues, other writers, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do, and it's a lot of times very positive about the subject matter. It just, you know, and they're people I trust. They're not just like, oh yeah, that's great, whatever. And so it's generally tends to be honest with you, people that hold the keys to the kingdom, that tend to be the ones that start to shy away because they get nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, people who view mines rip mine apart. And like, they usually just like, well, what is it, you know, that they really like give me a really hard time, which I appreciate it because it's like it keeps me on my toes and allows me to like really think about, you know, some really tough questions if I have to answer them and rethink how I do my pitch sometimes if I have to.
Right.
I have three thoughts if I could jump in really quickly before I forget them. Or sorry, Neha, were you about to go? Okay, so the first one was, you mentioned that by the time they get to the end and they hear that shock factor, that's when they turn away. But I wonder why they haven't heard the music already, like why that isn't earlier, why they haven't experienced the visuals, the music, the sounds before they get to that shock factor, or, you know, the thing that gives them pause. And then something I really loved that Ro had mentioned in their presentation is that there was like a takeaway moment. I want audiences to leave feeling this way. And I think that was something that like could even be brought out more. That could be part of the, yes, there's this shock factor and there's this moment at the end. And that therefore it is necessary because it makes audiences feel this way. And then the third part that kind of splinters is that I'd invite that hesitancy that you're hearing from producers to turn into more of a conversation whenever possible of, okay, why do you have a pause with that? Is there something that I can do to adjust my story? Not necessarily remove that if it's something that's integral to the storyline, to the theme, but is there something you can learn from that feedback to kind of adjust, kind of come to a middle of understanding, or take that as you think about it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we're pitching, it can feel like someone's just coming at you with a product, and inviting producers to be part of that product versus, hey, this is something I'm just giving to you, but have them be part of that process can often give that sense of ownership into it and allow them to have some bravery towards taking a product they typically would not want to use.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Rose, you know, creating a mood board or, you know, also introducing that part a little bit earlier, like Andy was saying, that is like a key thing to like, you know, tease them a little bit to, you know, throughout the pitch a little. So it's not just the shock factor at the end of it, I think.
Thanks, Daniel.
I think I'm resonating with what Andy was saying about kind of the ordering of how this concept is shared. Because like in the chat, I'm saying producers hear the shooting part before even reading or listening to it. So I think making it clear of like the context of the story, and then that the shooting is part of the story, but really making that story clear so it's not about the shooting and then they dismiss the whole thing. So I think other panels have said this as well, but really I think careful consideration of the context, and then also maybe pushing back to say that art delves directly into those uncomfortable, you know, tragic moments of life and like systemic problems that we face in society. You might say like, oh, this is too serious, but these are people's realities. So I would kind of push back and say like, there's been so much important art that, and the reason why it's important is because art can speak to these really difficult facets of life in ways that nothing else can. So maybe kind of getting into the complexity of the situation and advocating that we need this musical for these reasons, and to not shy away from the difficulty, but to show that this is part of the power of the piece itself, is the difficulty.
Also, Brett, I wanted to ask, do you have a personal story connected to this?
Yeah, and I mean the other part too. Yes, I do, because I mean I was a senior in high school during Columbine, so and I lived in Denver, Colorado, so it was very. I had a girlfriend who went to Columbine and was very worried about her, and I have a big story about the world at that moment, and I try to tell it whenever I can. I think one of the things that gets difficult for a piece like this too, though, is that especially with musical producers, is that sometimes you don't even get in the room with them. They just dismiss you before you even get a chance to get in the room with them to get that humanity part. And so they'll read a synopsis or, I mean, what we tend to get is, oh my God, the music's great. I don't want to show about that.
I think, sorry, Brett, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go for it. Sorry.
That really resonates with me though, because as someone who sells these shows on the marketing side of things, once I have the product, it's approved by a producer. I always like to think, okay, how can I connect this with other themes, other organizations? Like, what are the conversations that can come from that? You know, maybe it's that we partner with this organization and we have this theme in the talkback. And here is, you know, like, think about in your ideal world, once it gets produced, what then? What are things that can get producers excited about, oh, we haven't been able to have this conversation with our audience or our community. This is a great way to meet those goals.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something in the past we've talked about, partnering with, certain Connecticut organizations, via Sandy Hook and whatnot, because I mean, the show is very much about having a conversation and not about going, this is the only answer. And because we wouldn't dare in a beautiful way. And, we want people to go and have conversations afterwards. That's the most exciting part for us.
This reminds me of a performance that we had at NJPAC called Slut the Play. So it was about, I believe young teenage girls, and they were, someone called a girl a slut or something like that on social media. And then, it really follows that story. So it's definitely doable. So I think as long as you're getting that feedback from, the people that could help you, and rewriting as much as possible and being creative and innovative of how you're creating your pitch Bible, like Ro was saying. I think we could see this on the theater pretty soon, huh? Hopefully.
Yes, from your words, Danielle. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Brett, for providing that question on the virtual stage at the Creators Room. Very insightful information. I think this is like a great segue to talk about networking and using your community to, get your art out there and things like that. So to be completely transparent, I pretty much worked with all of these lovely panelists already. So I met Andy, Neha, and Sarah through APAP, which is a performance organization. And we were all part of Emerging Leaders back in 2020, before the world shut down, literally. We all met there, and it was a great resource to find out what other people are doing, what they're interested in. Like, I work in arts education, so it's a little bit different from, Sarah's perspective or Andy's perspective. So it's cool to You know, make sure you're part of different networks. And you know, get your network on and talk to different people. Sarah, how do you feel about different organizations, and how has that helped you in like your career with looking for talent?
Absolutely. I think that networking, and really how I like to think about it, is nurturing relationships is paramount to my work. And there's so many different ways that it's helpful. I won't be able to capture all of them, but perhaps something I'd like to think about and kind of frame the pitching process is that I really do believe it's the start of a relationship. So if you're an artist making a pitch and you have a goal of getting an exhibition of your work presented, or perhaps a performance presented, and it doesn't work out at that time, on the other side, the presenter, they're going to remember you. It's not that it might be like a clear or complete just kind of dismissal of your work. I really do think that timing is so important. So it might be that it's not a good fit at that time. It's not that exhibition. It's not that particular performance season, but it's all about continuing that relationship. So after the pitch, kind of following up, and even after, if that happened in a certain year, kind of checking in every year and then showing the presenter how your work has developed. So I think that that kind of relationship building is really important, and the pitch is part of that process. So when thinking about networking, I think that it allows you to kind of course, broaden the artists that you get to see, the artists that you hear about. So I think that's important. And also this idea that of networks where you want to scale deep, but not necessarily wide. So of course, like, it's awesome to meet as many people and have these conversations with a lot of different people, but also the idea of, an inch wide, but mile deep. The further and the deeper that the conversations go, I think the more expansive the opportunities of collaboration between those two people become. So I'm trying to tie the idea of, networking and relationship building to the pitch. So I think it's all kind of one process that happens.
You want to go? I have, I think, 3 main rules when it comes to networking. 1, never use the term, hey, I just want to pick your brain. I think it's absolutely one of it, if I've ever seen that in a LinkedIn message or in a message come through, or if someone meets me and is like, hey, I want to pick your brain over lunch or over coffee, I'm immediately like, what do you want from me? What are you trying to gain from me? And networking is about relationships and an equilibrium in those relationships. So you're not just going to a presenter to be like, hey, take my work. You're asking a presenter, what are the types of works that you want to be bringing to your space? And that creates a different kind of equilibrium relationship that isn't just, hey, I'm here to mooch off of you because we've now created this one moment or this one conversation or shared a drink. And lastly, it is about really tailoring your pitch and tailoring your product for what that presenter needs based off of the conversations that you've had. If you copy and paste the same presentation, the same pitch, the same 30-second elevator pitch, and it's not tailored to that kind of producer presenter, they're going to go, well, I heard 5 others that were just like that, or 5 of my colleagues have shared the same thing with me, because everybody talks. And that's something that's so important to know.
Yeah, I agree to all of those. Building relationships, you're building authentic, long-lasting relationships when you network. It doesn't mean you have to have a business card or a suit or any sort of, networking scary mindset going into it. It just means, I always say, I want to connect with you on a human to human level. And whether that means something comes out of this conversation now or in 5 years or never, you're now somebody that is in my network. and that I can learn from, that I can share with, that maybe it'll be a great opportunity for both of us. So that's how I approach networking. And it has led me to incredible opportunities. And this example, this exact example is one of them, because we all went into this emerging leadership group wanting to learn, knowing that we would be meeting people, but not really with this expectation of, oh, I'm going to get this tangible result from it. And here we are 2 years later, being able to support each other, learn from each other, help grow our projects, our professional projects. And I think that that has become a really beautiful thing. And of course, when Dani reaches out, she doesn't need to pitch me the way that she might have to pitch other people, because I know how incredible she is. And I'm happy to say yes immediately. You know, it's a different kind of pitch at that point once you know someone.
Yeah, definitely about building, because, you know, when we all met, that was like, again, it was before the world shut down. And then the fact that we all stayed in communication, we all, you know, we did those Zoom meetings, you know, catching up, even if it was like nothing's going on here or we're still in shutdown, we still had those conversations, and we have a running, you know, a group chat and WhatsApp, and you know, it's really cool to just see what everyone is doing. And with, you know, that with emerging leaders, there was like a lot of affinity groups. Can one of you just, you know, describe like that experience during our time at APAP in 2020?
Yeah, affinity groups are an incredible resource because they connect you with people that have something in common with you, whether it's a cultural trait, a physical trait, any kind of identity that you carry that you might not have in your workplace setting, or if you're an entrepreneur and you're an artist and you don't have a network of people you see regularly. That's a great opportunity to be able to connect with people, to get to know them on a different, you know, people go into those without agendas necessarily. It's just a place to start forming those relationships and meet people that you can collaborate with. I feel like I sound like a broken record because it's so much about relationship and building and collaboration. But affinity groups are such a great space for that. And they're everywhere. They could be your state arts council. They could be part of an arts organization you're a part of. It could be at a conference.
Definitely. And Ro, as a creative, you know, artist, how have you been able to like create your network, and where have you started from? And do you have any pointers on networking?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that I despise networking. I do not like it at all, but you would never be able to tell that. Most people think that, oh, you're a people person, you talk so well with people. I don't like it. I make myself do it.
Yeah.
And I have to think of it for me, I have to think of it differently. I have to like train my mind to think that I am talking to somebody who is just like me. They just have an opportunity that I need to get to, you know, that I don't have myself, right? So, but I have to think of that person at my level, right? And I have to think of it as just someone I'm talking to, you know, to get a relationship with. Like everyone who keeps mentioning relationships, I'm trying to build a relationship with this person or a partnership with this person. And so I have to think of it like that, because I really struggle with, you know, the whole talking to people and things like that. And I know I don't look like it. And people always tell me, no, that's not true. It's really true. I'm actually an introvert. I'm who fakes as an extrovert. So that I struggle with that. But what I'm in a lot of networks. I'm in like things like Stage 32, groups that are specifically for screenplay writers, people who are in the industry, you know, cinematographers, every hairdressers, stage combat people, choreographers, like just about anybody. So I have right there in these networks, you know, people that I can reach out to or talk to. You know, they're right there. We have conversations, we have workshops, we have, you know, chat rooms that we can talk to about. And that's a lot easier for me than actually going face to face with people. So it works for me to do online things and be in online groups and chat rooms and things like that, where I can talk to people and, get information. The other thing that I do, I also follow writers a lot, and I also find out like who their agents are and who
Yeah.
who they know and things like that. Because like right now I'm pitching for agents, so I go and find writers whose styles are similar to mine and things like that, and I find out who their agents are, and start reaching out to those agents and things like that. So I have my strategy because I really, like I said, I'm not the best, networking person in the world, but you have to find a comfort level, and that's my comfort level. That's how I look at it. That's where I'm working from.
Yeah, I definitely follow, like when Insecure was wrapping up their season on HBO, or even when it first started, I was like, who are the writers? And my tagline in my personal life is always read the credits. So I always sit back and read the credits of who's working on things. So I tend to look at the credits and Google them or search for them on Instagram, social media, follow them. In particular with Insecure, that HBO series, they had, because the show's wrapped up, but they had a writer's room Instagram. So you could get a peek into how a writer's room is ran, how they come up with different mood boards, the color coding to, their systems and brains of different writers. That was a cool resource for me. And I'm not really a television writer, but I'm just curious to see how things run. So hence the creators room and having these panels about, how things look behind the scenes. So definitely research, and those writers are out there. So everybody has a social media. And Andy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing about networking before we moved on. Networking doesn't always have a label, and it happens when you least expect it too.
Yeah.
Some of the deepest relationships that I have with artists, I met when I was online getting a drink or washing my hands at the sink, and we just started having a conversation about her earrings or about their band and what style of music they like playing. And that made us connect as humans first. And then we elevated it to, oh, what do you do here? Just totally after that, once we were comfortable with each other. So to Rose's point, seeing each other as equals and then thinking about it.
I love that. This kind of reframing of what networking is. I had to go through that myself because I think a frame that's helpful for me is, instead of thinking of networking, or maybe, just using a different word of finding my conspirators, who can I find that are allies, that are aligned with what I do in the arts. And for me personally, I'm in the arts for several reasons, but one of the main reasons is that I want to better relationships between people. I want to better relationships between people and our earth. And what is the power of art to transform these relationships, and what can I do as a curator and producer to harness this transformative power for collective liberation, for the not yet here, for all of these things. So if there's a striving in what you're doing in the arts, and the arts are not easy, of course, we have a passion for this. There's so many beautiful people out there, so it's like finding your people, finding these other people that are dedicating their lives for a shared vision and this collective effort. So for me, it's changed completely. I'm not networking in this weird way. It's I'm going out to try to find the people that I can breathe together with. And APAP, the Association for Performing Arts Professional Conference, I believe the keynote speaker said the Latin origin of the word conspirators, conspire, it means to breathe together. So it's who can I breathe together with in this difficult life? And that's what I want to do with networking. So where are you all at? Let's just do this together. That's how I see it.
I would also just pose the question, are you talking about your mission with the people who are around you? are you utilizing your network as it currently exists? Or is it just you made a connection and now that connection just exists in the nebulous atmosphere? Are you taking the time to talk about the things that really bring light to you, bring joy to you, and then translating that into the work that you're doing? Because people buy into people, they don't buy into a product.
Right. I love that. And also creating relationships means like checking in when there's really nothing going on as well. It's not always just talking to people because you need something or anything like that. I feel like when I build my relationships is mainly just checking in, making sure you're good mentally, like you need any assistance with anything nowadays. It's just like check on your friends and your networking, your community. So I'm big on that as well. And I put in APAP's website in the chat so everyone could understand what we're talking about. Um, and let's get to some questions. I did see a couple come through. It looks like it was answered as well. Melissa Schaefer says, how many video clips ideally do you want to share? I think this was in regards to Sarah's, I think, dance comment that you made earlier. Melissa, is that right? Are you still here? I don't think Melissa's still here. But I think, so ideally, how many videos would you include in your pitch? So Ro, did you include any videos in yours? I don't think so. Or
I did not do one, but I'm planning on doing one. I can. For television and for film, though, it's a little bit different because it's not, you haven't created the work yet. So you can do what we call a Ripple-matic, where you take pieces of other films and television and you piece them together to look the way that you want your trailer to look or your show to look. It's called a Ripple-matic, and you can like go on YouTube. Some people have really done like Looper's Ripple-matic. Ripple-matic was really cool. It almost looks like the trailer that it actually turned out to be. So for me, if I put a video in there, it would be a trailer on what this show could look like. So because with writing, a lot of times you don't have, the thing isn't already up and running. You have to play to their imagination.
Yeah, and I think having like clips of like different scenes, like if you wanted to use like Euphoria as an example, like that kind of imagery, or they use different angles and colors and everything's really cool to watch. We have a question in the chat. Can you speak about collaborating with known individuals?
Yeah,
EJ?
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that question. I was obsessed about type it in the chat. What kind of collaboration are we talking about?
And I can allow you to speak if you're interested. Are you there? Okay, there was another question, the anonymous one. I am curious about branding. What are some strategies for building an accessible brand identity on social media and then write about it? And how you started to elaborate on that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit further?
Sure. I think as I come from pitching from a couple of different angles. I was an agent in my past life. I'm a publicist right now. I'm also a curator, but I'm also pitching to venues. So pitching is a pretty frequent part of my life in whatever I do. And so I kind of come back to the three terms that I think really delve into the foundational pieces of why a pitch is important, and not only the pitch itself, but how you're looking at your whole branding identity and your visibility strategy, which really comes down to ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos: what are you doing to convince your audience that you're a figure of authority or credibility? I'd love to use Ro's presentation as an example of the manner in which they showed the ethos, pathos, and logos in that presentation. By talking about their own personal experiences, you can talk about the credits. By the work that they've done and the credibility in the work that they've done, they've continued to show their credibility, and that really builds that ethos piece. When we're talking about pathos and convincing an audience that they are now part of this argument or this emotional story, that emotional plea part of this, that comes from that tonality that Ro was sharing with us, the stories of each of those characters and why you delve into them and why why their stories are so important to be told. And then the logos part of it, which is the reason, the facts, the figures. So how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to produce, who's involved, how many people are involved, the logistical aspects of it. If you can build that into your brand story and your visibility strategy, all of a sudden you have something that is tangible for an audience to grasp onto. Does that answer your question? I'm happy to talk more into that.
I think that was.
And I have one more part of that, because the question was a little bit too, in addition to that, about social media and accessibility. So in addition to all of what Neha just said, if you're in terms of your visual brand identity on social media, I would recommend looking at pages that you identify with, that you feel inspired by, and seeing what it is about them that inspire you, and then find the way to weave that into what your brand is, the internal ethos, pathos, logos that we were just talking about, and be your authentic self. And also, since you use the word accessibility, and I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but on social media, there is a lot that you can do to make your content as accessible as possible, and platforms are constantly changing. So I recommend looking it up constantly and Googling, but making sure you're adding captions, making sure you're adding alt text, all of those things that fall into that accessibility category. Please stay on top of it. I wish more brands were always on top of it, but we're slowly learning to get there.
Right. And there's a lot of free material out there and panels like this where it could go into depth about creating your branding and your voice, and how that looks on social media, the pros of doing like your bio area, how to make that more effective when people are just going to your Instagram page and what they're looking at, where can they find you? If there's a shop, you're selling items or classes, acting classes or something, having all of that clear on your social media. So and also consistent as well on different platforms. I noticed on Instagram that you can create a guide as a creator. I think you have to have a creator account, and really detail your story. Like for the creators room, I have a guide for it. It's really detailed based off of your previous posts, what people are saying, audience, and also clips of your works. That's another cool way that Instagram created to get more marketing ideas, and it's free marketing on social media. So definitely utilize it well, and be mindful of what you're following and what you're liking and saving, so it all makes sense on your algorithm. So if you're liking cats and dogs and all of that, it doesn't add up to okay, I'm an artist trying to put out a film or something. Make sure that you're following the right thing. So also the ads that pop up make sense, and you may have workshops that come up for you. So that's my 2 cents about marketing, and what I find that it's useful. So especially if it's free, as long as you have your website together, where people can reach you and your emails and all of that, you'll be fine. Are there any other resources that you all would recommend for people in theater or in the arts period, social media for marketing, or different workshops they could probably be a part of?
I'll drop a couple links in the chat. I'm a big fan of Facebook groups because that's a great place where you can search for questions before, or pick people's brain. I know Neha hates that phrase, but pick people's brain in a sort of way. So there's a couple of marketing ones that I can drop there that talk about branding often.
If you're looking for affordable copywriters, release writers, anybody who's looking to put together some quick graphics, there are a lot of freelancing sites that are out there, Fiverr, Upwork, etc., that you can always utilize for a far cheaper rate than would be if you were just out putting an RFP out for some copywriters. Something to look into before, and also utilize your network. I'm sure there are folks in your network who are copywriters who can do social media, and folks are always looking for work.
And Ro, do you have any resources or recommendations for like your Facebook groups that you follow or anything?
I mean, I do like was mentioned before by Andy, the Facebook groups. I'm also a part of a network called like Stage 32, like I said, it's like they have workshops, they have people of all, who are in the entertainment industry that you can connect with, and they have chat rooms and things like that. Yes, and I well, like I said, I'm I'm Facebook. I can't think of any of the Facebook names like groups right now, but yeah, that's one of them.
I would say if you're in the dance field, Dance USA or Dance NYC will hold events, and they also have conferences. And then if you are an Asian artist or an artist of the Asian diaspora, Asian American Arts Alliance, you might resonate with their work and their resources that they produce. And also Asia Art Archive in America also hosts different types of events and workshops. So those are just some that come to mind.
Awesome. So I will include this in for those that attended this panel. I will email you all with these resources and links to it. And I don't have any other topics to discuss. Can you all just say where they can find you and any upcoming projects or anything like that? We could start with Andy.
Yeah, I know we've been dropping in the chat. You can follow Hartford Stage on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Full disclosure, I just started a couple of months ago, so I'm still figuring out our branding and our institution, and kind of trying to reframe that to what fits my vision. Personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think that is in the chat too. I love connecting with people and cheering people on and hearing about stories about how people are doing. So I do love that platform because it's a great way to keep in touch and also hear and support each other's career journeys. And if you know anyone in the Hartford area, any creatives, I'm new in this city and I'm always looking to collaborate with people creatively in many different ways, whether that's they cook or they have a local artisan shop or they're a photographer or a muralist. I want to meet them. So if you or anyone you know is in Connecticut, reach out and say hi.
Sarah?
Yeah, so all of Asia Society's kind of links and everything can be found on the Asia Society website. We have a listserv. It's the Asia Society Museum listserv. So all of the events that I'll be curating and producing will be announced on that listserv. So I think that is the best way to stay up to date about projects that I'm working on and that the museum is offering in the whole. And then, Asia Society has all social media as well. And then personally, my Instagram, I think it's going to be dropped in the chat. So feel free to reach out to me. And something that I'm really passionate about is speaking with folks who are transitioning from being artists to other careers. I mean, I walked that journey when, going from ballet and contemporary ballet dance into what I do now. And I don't think this is discussed enough. I think we always need to have this discussion way more. So if folks want to talk to me about that, I'm happy to discuss that and other things.
Thanks. Neha?
Yeah, I'm based out of San Diego. I know a lot of you are on the East Coast, but if you're ever on the West Coast, by all means, let a girl know. You can also reach out to me personally on my Instagram, Neha G. Gandhi. I'm more than happy to, take a look at any of your pitches. If you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, does this hit my ethos, logos, pathos? By all means, feel free to reach out. Of course, if you have art and curation projects going on, I love being able to share other people's work and all the good work that we get the opportunity and grace to do. So please, by all means, reach out and let me know.
Cool. And Ro?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram. You see my handle should be and it's at Rashawn_Bell. And I'm excited because I am going to be working on my first short film going to be released soon, probably next year. And Danielle happens to be my executive producer for that. So I'm really excited about getting started on that project. So look out for that coming soon.
We are working here.
Talk about a collaboration. Awesome.
Yes, and you can follow me on Link Up with Danny on Instagram. And also I have a website, linkupwithdanny.com. And you can find more about what we're doing. I do want to shout out our tech help. We have Renee, who is also a co-curator for the Creators Room. He will be curating the March event that we have coming up. Renee, can you turn on your camera if you're close by? And then, Renee, do you want to talk about March?
Yeah, hi everyone. Renee Velez. I'm the Youth and Emerging Artist Development Manager here for Arts Education. And next month we have a great show with Mark Gross and the Jazz for Teens Behind the Scenes, really focusing on showcasing a lot of the scenes that we do here at NJPAC with our great program, whether it's being part of the James Moody Jazz Band or the George Wein Scholars. So I don't want to say too much, but I hope you guys can tune in because it's going to be a great show, especially for the jazz connoisseurs.
Yes, and we're also going to be talking about how to transition from being a student or college student if you want to get into the music industry and be that musician, how to book a gig, how to, again, we're going to revisit ownership. So definitely check out our second panel that we did last year called Artist Development. That was on May 7th. And you can learn more about music rights there. And I do want to shout out Randall. He is helping us in the chat and he's been helping us, build on this series. So Randall, if you're there, you could turn your camera on, say hello to the folks. And also, I just want to say thank you to our guests. Randall, do you want to say anything?
No, this was beautiful. This was great. I appreciate all the information, and I know our attendees did as well. Yeah, everyone sounds and look great. Thank you for this, Danielle.
No problem. Thank you. And then we have more coming up. So definitely stay tuned to our social media at NJPAC Arts Ed and also at NJPAC. We will be announcing more the Creators Room dates. And we are also going to be working with our theater director, E. Bradshaw, on our June panel for our Act Out Loud theater program that we have here. So it's more in store for the Creators Room. I want to thank again the panelists and thank you again for our lovely guests that came. You will all get this recording and the resources that we mentioned. Thank you again. And oh, thanks, Brett, again for having that live conversation. It was really helpful to, to see a creative just like asking those real questions and getting feedback. And that's what this is all about. So thank you again and have a great night. Bye, everyone.